Welcome back to another live and amplified Indie Fusion podcast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we're back at it again with another amazing podcast. Today, we have a very special guest joining us, actually, a repeat guest from Ventura, California. We have Katie Leigh. How's it going today?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing really well. It's a warm day here. We'll go with warm. I'm not
Yeah.
going to oversell it. So,
We complain about the weather in California, but we don't understand warm like you understand warm.
yeah. Well, you know what though? In California, if it's like I hear it's like 70s in like December and January, I'll take whatever you consider warm in the summer. So
Anything over 80 degrees.
I will take it. I will
we
take
start
it.
we start complaining when it hits 80.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. But glad to have you on the podcast. Excited to sit down and chat with you a little bit, get to know more about you. So you're in Ventura, California now, but you're originally from Oklahoma?
I was born in Oklahoma, and we moved around a lot. So I've lived in Oklahoma. I lived in Washington State for a little while. Texas. I actually lived outside of Dallas for a little bit in
Nice.
Garland.
Nice.
And then I mostly grew up in Northern California, so San Jose, Santa Rosa, and then I moved to San Diego when I started high school,
Gotcha.
and just moved here about 5 years ago.
Awesome, awesome. And so then where does like music come into play? Was that something that was just kind of always there throughout all the moves, or did you kind of discover that a little bit later?
Yeah, music's always been part of my life. My parents are both musicians, my sister and my brother. My dad, growing up, was a music pastor. So we
Cool.
were always in music in some capacity, always on stage, helping with music. And then we started all playing instruments early. My mom was a piano teacher. So we all took piano, we all played instruments in concert band and jazz band. And my dad wanted a jazz trio, so I played tenor sax, my sister played trombone, and my brother plays trumpet. And he's a really amazing jazz musician. He still plays. But yeah, it was just part of our blood, ingrained in us from the beginning.
Nice. And I'm guessing that was kind of how you discovered singing and stuff like that was in the jazz trio, or was that something you started experimenting with in like school and whatnot?
I think I just always loved to sing, even as a little girl. I was always making up songs and um, just singing in the car, singing at home. My sister and I would stand on the fireplace with spatulas and pretend to sing on stage. And my mom was a vocal performance major. So have just always been around like musicals and stuff like that. So from a really young age, I was always singing, but I always just really loved it. It was just always something. Even when you ask a little kid, what do you want to be when you grow up, I was always like, I want to be a singer. That was always the first thing that I said.
Nice, nice. And so from there, it was just kind of doing the family thing. When did you kind of start writing your own kind of stuff?
I was probably in seventh or eighth grade when I used to journal a lot, but
Hmm.
it turned into writing lyrics. And because I played saxophone, you can't really sing and play saxophone at the
Yeah.
same time. So my dad played guitar always at home, and had just like an old classical guitar that I learned and kind of taught myself to play. But really just as a vehicle to be able to write music. I was always making notes and writing in my journal and writing my own little songs, even from a really young age. And my dad was a songwriter. He was in bands, in college and stuff like that. So I think part of that influence comes from him, is just the writing part.
Nice, nice, nice. And so, like, where does your kind of professional career or journey into music kind of start? Is it like once you kind of moved to Ventura, you start exploring music, or how's that kind of all start to play out?
It's funny because I felt like even so I played a lot of sports growing up too. So that was kind of always my main focus, even though I played in concert bands and jazz bands and stuff, even into college. Um, but I always kind of kept my music kind of to myself. It was always something I just did for me, writing and playing my own stuff just to myself. And it wasn't until like high school that people realized that I was a musician. They didn't
Mm,
know anything about me writing music or anything. And I remember one of my friends told me to sign up for a talent show at school. So I played one of my original songs at school, and everyone who had just seen me as a soccer player for so long, suddenly I was like a singer. They had no idea. So it kind of started there. And then in college, I, had a ton of friends that were all musicians and played in different bands and stuff. And then really, it wasn't until after I graduated that I really started to pursue it as something to do like with a group. So
mm,
I started collaborating with other friends of mine, one in particular that played mandolin. We would just sit and like jam out on my patio at my apartment. And then slowly started to incorporate other people. My sister sang harmonies with me. My other friend played bass. And we just started to kind of flush out the arrangements of my songs that I'd had already written several years before, but I'd never really played for anyone. So it kind of started there in San Diego in my 20s.
mhm.
Um, and then it's just kind of been something I've always done. I've never really thought twice about performing or being on stage. It's just always kind of been part of who I am. Um, and I think there was a time period, I have two kids, but after my second kid, it was really challenging to find the time and even just the inspiration to write music. And it wasn't until I think I moved to Ventura till I started to really pick it back up again. I had a friend that is one of my neighbors. They were having a music thing at their house, just like a barbecue, and he had set up a PA and a mic and the whole thing, and we could hear them playing music, and it was live music, and I was like, that's weird. And then they invited us to over to their house a few weeks later for a big barbecue with their family.
Nice.
And um, they were like, they didn't know that I was a musician, but they
Mm,
were like, do you want to play a couple songs? And I was like, yeah, sure. But I don't think they realized that I was a legit musician. People say like, oh yeah, I play music, but they just kind of dabble. It's not
mm,
really like their focus. But it had been so long since I had played in front of people. So it was a nice kind of positive reinforcement of like, oh no, you can still do this. This is like something that you're good at.
yeah.
So it was kind of a nice affirmation to have that. And then he played all around Ventura and invited me, kind of similar to Jess, just to
Mm,
come and play a couple songs before his shows or in between his sets or whatever.
mm.
And then it was just kind of a jumping point from there. Okay, I'm like, I'm still going to do this. Like, I really enjoy doing it. So why
Nice.
not?
Yeah, absolutely. You had mentioned earlier that you had kind of kept your music a secret early on.
Yeah.
Was there like a reason, or was it just kind of something that you didn't want people to know?
I think it's just because we grew up around musicians and on stage and playing, a variety of different concerts and whatever. I just felt like it was kind of always expected.
Mm,
So it wasn't like a surprise that I was playing music. So to me, it wasn't that significant. It wasn't
mm,
like this, oh my gosh, she's a musician. It's like, well, of course, like look at her parents, look at her brother and sister, everybody's musical. um so I guess it was something that I did for myself because it was like the way I processed things, and
mm,
I'm still the same way. If I'm going through something or watching a TV show that has a significant impact on me, I'm always taking notes and
mm,
writing. I'm always writing, and it's kind of always been that way. And it wasn't that I wanted to keep it from anyone, it was just so personal to me.
mm,
It's like writing in a diary. So it just felt like something that I didn't need to share. And I think it took a couple of people in my life to be like, you need to share this with people. I
yeah,
don't know why you don't. You're a great
yeah,
writer. You should be doing this.
yeah,
So,
absolutely. It's really interesting because it's feels like you were struggling with humility while also just assuming that people just kind of you're assuming that people are assuming you automatically do music, but your humility is just kind of like, I'm not just not going to talk about it because
Right.
I'm assuming people already know anyways. So,
Yeah, exactly. I just assumed. And then, especially in high school, when people found out, it was just like this big shock. And I'm like, well, yeah, I've been doing this since I was 5.
right.
This isn't a surprise to me.
Hmm.
So it's just kind of funny.
I wonder how many teenagers, especially in high school, kind of struggle with that. Like there's something that they just grew up doing and they don't really tell a whole lot of people because it's just something that they do. And then when
Mhm.
people find out, it's like, why didn't you tell us? That's really cool, you know?
Yeah, totally.
So once you moved to Ventura, you kind of started playing a little bit, and that was right around pandemic, or was that right before the pandemic?
It was right before we moved up here in 2019 in July. And I had met one of my friends that played music and kind of played out then. And then there's an event called Artist Brew in Ventura
Mhm.
that Danny Stacy well, she hosts, but from far away, that she's kind of put together, and they have it usually every month. And that's where I met Jess, is going to that and playing a few songs. And there's not a lot of female songwriters or musicians in Ventura, at
Oh,
least. I mean,
really?
there's more now, but I think at the time there weren't a lot of like female fronted bands or duos or whatever. Um, so it was kind of like unexpected, I think, that there was another like singer songwriter, and I kind of came out of nowhere, because I moved here and nobody knew who I was.
Yeah.
And I had a band in San Diego and we played all over, and you know, got nominated for a San Diego Music Award and all of this
Nice.
stuff. So in our own little kind of group, people knew who we were, but then I moved here and I was no one,
Hmm.
So we kind of had to, I had to start all over.
Yeah.
Um, but it was a good experience. I think music is one of those things that connects people. And I've met so many friends just from being out, going to different shows, participating in shows. I try to even just go to those artist brews, even if I'm not playing, because
Hmm.
it's just nice to see who's local and, meet those people and make those connections. Um, and just talk about music. I could sit and talk about music for hours. It's just one of those things that feels like such a part of me that it's like you can't talk about it enough.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Was because I love the idea of building up so much, I'll call it street credit in San Diego with your music, because
Yeah.
you build up this credit or this cred or credibility or whatever. I swear I'm not trying to sound like I know what I'm talking about, but and then you move to a new place and then you've got to start all over again, which is a really cool challenge because it's like at the end of the day, real talent's going to recognize real talent. But
Hmm.
when you come into a new scene and basically have to start over, it's like that feels like a really cool challenge to me. I've done it a few different times and it's always fun and exciting because you just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, we moved a lot growing up, so I felt like I was always kind of the new kid. And I'm not super outgoing, but
Mm-hmm.
music is like another language, so being in that arena and being able to communicate with other people just by talking about music, it just makes it that much easier to get to know people and make those connections. And I really do feel like, anywhere that I've traveled, I was in Mexico for a friend's wedding, and the musicians that were playing at the wedding, I was talking to about music. And one of my girlfriends was like, well, she's a musician and da da da. So the next day they had a show down at some little Italian restaurant in Sayulita. And they were like, you should come and play a few songs. And I'm like, hell yeah, let's do it. It's
Nice.
just like being able to find those connections with other humans who have the same interests as you. It just makes life so much more enjoyable. And just it's just such a huge part of my life and part of who I am.
Mhm.
And it's hard to not find those people, and I feel like it's like we gravitate to each other without even really realizing it, because we have this common goal in life, is just to write music and play music or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Uh, Transitioning to writing kind of music, where are you kind of at creatively right now?
Oh, I have a lot of new music that I need to record, and I keep saying that, and I will. I promise at some point I will. Um, I think I mean, writing to me is like a daily thing. It's not just I sit down and write a song. I think that's something that's changed as I've gotten older. Is I felt this need of like I need to be inspired to write. And if there's anything that I've learned from other writers is it's just like working out or running or any of those things. It's you have to do it all the time to be good at it or to kind of find your groove. And it doesn't mean you're going to finish anything. You might have just notes and notes and notes and then eventually piece it together, which is a lot of times what I do. But I have a lot of new music that I need to put together and finalize, and a lot of it we play out. I have a couple guys that play with me in a band, and and it's nice to have an arrangement in mind and then have it come to life when you have other musicians. That's my favorite part of it. I don't really love to play solo. To me it's kind of boring.
Mm,
So it's nice to find other people that are willing to collaborate with you and work on your own stuff, and just make it come to life.
for sure, for sure. I don't think I've ever heard anybody call playing solo boring. I don't think I've
It's a snooze fest for me. I don't know what it is, and it's probably just because I have done it for so long. um and it's not that it's boring, it's just more fun to collaborate with
yeah.
other people. And I've always been in some kind of musical group, whether it's a concert band or jazz band
Mm,
or a band of some whatever nature you want, a country band, whatever you want to call it. So I find that I'm at ease more with other people than just playing by myself, even though
mhm.
I know people are probably just as enthusiastic about my solo gigs. But to me, I just feel like it's so much more enjoyable as a musician to share those moments, and you get to feel the dynamic of the music and the changes and all of that stuff, and you don't feel it the same way when you're playing by yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely understand where you're coming from on that one. Um, so outside of music, obviously you mentioned you have two kids, but when you do get like 2 minutes to yourself or whatever, what do you like to do outside of music?
I love to go to the beach. I love to run. I like to work out. I like to be outside and do active things. Um, I like to cook. I love to bake, like making cookies or cakes. I made four
Nice.
cakes this weekend for a family party. Um, Stuff like that.
That's the one thing I miss about being up in, I grew up in Chicago and we had a
Uh-huh.
neighbor that liked to bake. And it was just like, you always got like, it wasn't always, but every once in a while you'd get like a plate of brownies or something brought over. And it's like, thank you.
Yeah,
I love this.
I'm totally that neighbor. I'm always giving food away because I
Right.
don't want to eat all of it, but I would if it was here. So I'm like,
Yeah.
get rid of the cookies, get rid of the brownies, whatever I've made, I'm always giving it away.
Fair. It's one of those. We had one of those at my day job,
Hmm.
except they just recently moved away, so it was just like, oh, oh, well,
Yeah,
bring back the
I was
cookies.
always known in my office for making cinnamon rolls. Anytime we had some kind of like brunch, breakfast,
Nice,
whatever meeting, I was always making cinnamon rolls the night before to bring in.
nice. I love cinnamon. Oh man, I'll dang it. Oh well, no, that's
I'll
cool.
mail you some, don't worry.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Oh, and then where are you kind of at show wise right now? Do you have anything coming up or what do you got going on?
Yeah, we're playing up in Santa Barbara on Wednesday at the Sandbar. They have a country night every month or so. So we're gonna do well, more than a handful, but a handful of covers that people will probably know. And then I'm just trying to do as much as my original music as I
Hmm.
can. Um, because I'm a songwriter, right?
Yeah.
So it's like I gotta be able to share that, and then do stuff that people know because I know that just brings people in. But my goal as a songwriter is to just be able to make the same kind of impact on people with my music as the covers that they know. Because I know that when I go to see anyone, and I go to a ton of concerts all the time, you want to hear stuff that you know. But if you don't learn any of their new stuff, then you're not going to, you're never going to be influenced the same way. And I love I love songwriting in general, but I just love original artists. I think there's something so special about people who have these really amazing thoughts, and you sit there and you're so jealous of them because you're like, how did you write that? Why didn't I write that? I want to have that same kind of impact on other people, whether they're musicians or not. Music is just such an amazing way to have that effect on people.
Mm.
And my hope is that my music is good enough that they don't care that it's not George Strait,
Yeah.
Um, but as much as I love George Strait, I don't also want to do him the injustice of playing his music not the way it should be played.
Mm.
So it's also that I want to just have that kind of same impact. But and the music that I do cover, I want it to be my own version of
Yeah.
it, because I don't want to ever like butcher someone else's songs.
Yeah.
So I try to kind of find my own flavor with it and not just do it exactly as it's written.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Is there a song recently that you felt like, dang it, why didn't I write that one?
Oh, yeah, there's a new, I don't know if you know who Charlie Crockett is. He's from
Yep.
Texas
Yep.
too.
Yep. Yep.
He has a song called I Need Your Love.
Mm.
That's I saw him play. I've seen him play more than enough, but I saw him play a couple years ago in Santa Barbara at I can't remember the name of that theater, but he played that song and people got up out of their seats and just started slow dancing because it's kind of
Nice.
like a love song. It's like
Mm.
it's kind of like more groovy. But I saw that and I was like, I should have written that song, but I also just want to have that same kind of like effect on people,
Mhm.
that they hear something that makes them move, that makes them have a feeling. And it was just such a cool moment. And I literally went home the next day and wrote a song very similar to that song.
Mhm.
But because I was so affected by it, I was like,
Mm.
I want a song like that. I want to be able to play that and people get up and start two-stepping or
Mhm.
whatever. So I would say he's been one of my more recent artists that I've just loved to see live and to listen to his music all the time.
Yeah.
He just has so much fun on stage. His band is so tight.
Yeah.
They're just incredible musicians. And it's just so amazing to see someone who really came from nothing, that
Mm.
really cut his teeth, busking, playing all
Yep.
over the United States, up and
Yep.
down California. And he's just really made a huge name for himself. I think it's great.
Oh yeah. It's so funny story about Charlie Crockett. I lived in Roswell, New Mexico for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Um and I made friends with one of the big venue owners in Roswell. He has a venue and he bring in, most of the time it was musicians that were famous, like super famous at one point, and now they're like doing reunion tours, or they're just
Yeah.
kind of living off the fame of like whatever song or album was famous back in the day. And that's kind of the musicians he'd bring in. And then he'd bring in like the Texas Red Dirt artists because Roswell's like an hour from Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And so I left Roswell, moved to Florida, and he started booking this guy, Charlie Crockett. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I don't know who he is. And I just started listening to his music. And he would come like every 6 months and play in Roswell. I was like, man, if I ever get a chance to go see one of his shows, I'm going to do it. Right.
Yeah.
And I moved here to Texas and I'm within 7 hours of Roswell. I see Charlie, or as I'm in the process of moving here, they announced that Charlie's playing his last show in Roswell because this was like 2019. And so he had
Mm-hmm.
like graduated to a newer, a bigger venue, like bigger venue size. So it's like he came out of this little like dance or music hall, and then he would go into like the bigger venue. So they kind of advertising it as his your last chance to see him play in Roswell.
Yeah.
And I hadn't moved to Texas yet, and I was like, damn it, I'm not going to get to see him. And then the pandemic hit, and then all this stuff, and it's like 5 years later, I've still not seen the guy play. So
Oh, you
yeah.
have to see him live. I just saw him play at the Hollywood Bowl,
Oh well.
and it's just every single time it's just better and better. I don't know how he does it, but he's like a modern Wesley, but like with a country, more of a country, you know. He
Hmm.
dances all over the stage while he's playing. He like pretends his guitar is like a gun. He like holds it like this. It's just so entertaining to watch
Hmm.
him, but his music is just so heartfelt, and you can really tell he's spent the time editing and creating and writing like all the time,
Hmm.
and it's just amazing to watch them.
Nice. Nice. But I don't want to keep you here too much longer. If anybody wants to check out your music, shows, interact with you on social, all that fun stuff, where's the best place to find you?
Definitely Instagram. I have a link tree link on there, so that has a list
Nice.
of all the stuff happening. Bands in town is also another one. But Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere you stream music, my music is on there. I've got some old stuff from back in the band days, and then I have a bunch of new singles that I've released. So yeah,
Awesome. Awesome. Well, once again, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will catch y'all later.